So good afternoon, everybody. What a great day so far. I hope everybody's enjoying themselves. The content's been phenomenal. And
So interesting. So interesting. Yeah.
Julie, isn't it cool that we get to follow Ski, because he kind of left on a note of approachability and accessibility, right? That's going to be the key for brands to jump in. I think that's actually great words of wisdom and forecasting for what's going to happen next. So everybody, I get the pleasure of introducing and starting a conversation with both a colleague and a really good friend of mine, Julie Smithson. Julie is the co-founder, one of the co-founders of a company called MetaVRse that started about 6 years ago. And so just to give you a little bit of an understanding of what MetaVRse is, MetaVRse is a code optional platform that makes it easy for people to come in and create and share interactive 3D. And it can be anywhere. It's not limited, it's ubiquitous, and it's really designed to fall in line with their mission of just to democratize the entire experience and the accessibility of people to come into this. What I love about that is they're really looking at making this easy and simple. And then the work that they do in a consulting fashion really takes brands by the hand and actually leads them in. And instead of saying, you need to build the world's biggest metaverse, you need to allocate millions of dollars, what they really do is they're like, here's our crawl, walk, run strategy. Here's what makes sense for you based on your desired outcome and your North Star for what it looks like to be in this version of the evolution of the web. And Julie has done a lot of work in this space. She's really been an evangelist and really has been a real focal point for bringing women into this conversation as well with some of the boards that she has both started and chairing. I'll let Julie talk a little bit about that because I think it's super interesting. Julie, I'm going to veer a little bit. I think you should explain what code optional means to our group, just so that they all understand it. Just in fairness, my very first question when I met this crew over a year ago. So everybody, Julie Smithson.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Bob, for having me. And again, so proud to be here. And I know Alan Smithson was supposed to be in my place, but you've got me instead, plain and simple. And yeah, MetaVRse, we started years ago, back in 2016. We actually started this company, and we recognized the means of human communication that could take place with this technology, and what it meant to all different aspects of communication with each other and different verticals and that sort of thing. So we did recognize that coding and the attaching code to the technology, to this communication, was a big barrier. And so we set out to seek a solution that would alleviate that barrier and break down that barrier for entering into the metaverse. And that is what our MetaVRse engine and editor allows creators to do, is to create code optional experiences within our engine and deploy them on the web. And obviously there's a lot of exhaustion around apps, and we alleviate that process as well. We eliminate that piece to accessing that experience. So we play the part of the game engine behind everything, as well as having that creation process easy to use and deploy.
Yeah, and 6 years ago, right, as you guys are sitting there thinking about what the world is looking like, and you're looking at the web. Julie, by the way, has been in the tech space formally since 2010, but has always kind of been in the space and been an aficionado, and has a real entrepreneurial spirit in terms of building businesses and doing really smart things with very smart people. But it's 6 years ago, you're sitting there, this is a futuristic almost journey that you're about to embark on. And you and Alan and your co-founders sat down and started to kind of like plot what this future was going to look like, really Web 3.0, before anybody was truly talking about it. I know in conversations that we've had, you talked about what a flat experience the web felt like, how it was limiting to brands and how it really couldn't be as expressive. What does 6 years ago, what spurred you to start thinking about that?
Sure. We just came off of the developing and creating the world's first touchscreen DJ controller called the Emulator. So, starting in 2010, I immersed myself in interactive technology and understanding, and going into the music world, which is so interesting, and that we're following Ski's conversation as well. But really taking a look at immersive technology and how humans were responding to just even the touch screen part of it. And, from there, Alan, he ventured out into the technical space to learn more, and dove into VR, and came home one day and said, this is the future of communication. We need to get into this industry, and we need to learn everything that we need to know about it. And that's what we did. We created 360 videos. We created AR videos, VR applications, all sorts of things for retail and different industries, fintech and medical companies and things like that. Just applying this technology wherever we can, wherever we could, to learn about that human interaction. And we've taken all of those lessons and built to where we are today.
Yeah. And aside from maybe choosing the single best name for a company 6 years ago, like honestly, the universe was—
Who would have thought Mark would have done that plug for us, right?
The universe was on your side for sure. And you can definitely look at Facebook and say, hey, we kind of beat you to it. What decisions did you guys make early on that as you were building this company, right, and you were jumping into this space, which was uncharted territory? What worked, something that worked, and what didn't work? What did you quickly have to retreat and learn from? Because we just heard from Ski, do not be afraid to fail in this space.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, first of all, yes, we came up with the name, back in 2016, kind of had a gaming feel at the time, and that's what we went for. Our company's evolved obviously over the last 6 years and building so many different things out for so many different applications. And, just to make it clear that we are not the metaverse, there is going to be, the metaverse is a part of a whole bunch of different things that, Web 3.0 is going to apply to. And, it's everything from VR to AR, all of the different hardware technologies. And then there's AI, and then there's the marketplace that's going to attach itself to that as well. So we're really in the early stages of that, but we feel fortunate that we have a game engine that can support some of the strategies that enterprise companies and brands are looking at right now to be able to showcase their brand and what does it look like in an immersive experience. I think our history, being part of innovation and just learning every day from the things that you're doing, the processes and implementations that you're putting together, it's a learning experience every day. And, we've lived, we've learned, there's things that we wouldn't do again that we've changed before. I think, one of the biggest lessons that is really evolving this year especially is that communication with clients and managing expectations through the innovation process, which is really foreign to enterprise companies and even brands, just everybody understanding everything that's happening. And there's so many different components to the metaverse in general that need to be learned, need to be applied, considered, what different perspectives and things like that. I know we've heard today from from multiple speakers about community, and really, we know internally how much that word is moving closer up to the front of our mission now, to create that community that will, introduce the best practices of a metaverse out there.
And because you're acting almost like an advocate, right? The company is really trying to set the example for where tech companies are going in terms of building metaverses or consulting around them. Have you ever been able to successfully guide a client away from an objective, or simply have to say no because based on what they were doing, it just didn't feel right?
Yeah, I think, the big question is, what is the purpose for you going into the metaverse? And we've heard that already. You need to have a purpose to go there. I think the other thing is, what main computer does that end user use right now today that would invite them into that experience? And we can all literally say that the mobile device is an extension of our hand at this point. So, utilizing that tool, that device in your hand, to interact with technology. It's that next step of human connection into the technical world. And I use the term humanics a lot when it comes to, being able to have that the ability of human connection while using your technology to engage in these experiences. And humanics is really important as we remain true to ourselves, but also enjoy ourselves while we're in these experiences. So yeah, it's a journey.
Yeah.
It's definitely one journey that it's always innovating, always changing, and building those expectations for clients and taking them on that education journey is really important.
Yeah, it's certainly not for the weary, right?
No.
But as you think about it, right? We've learned, I think, over the last 10 years, we've heard a lot about new companies springing up, specifically in the tech space, being mission driven, right? And we've seen, the data tells us that mission driven companies that stay true to their purpose really do well. In fact, they do better than non-mission driven companies, right? That all the data is there. How do you guys, as you're taking on a huge initiative, right? You're trying to bring a democratized version of everything around XR to the world. How do you stay true to your mission while you still are focused on building this business, right? And being able to say yes to the things that are right, guide people to the things that make better sense, and even say no. So how do you juggle all of that being a mission-driven company?
Yeah, so our mission is to inspire and educate the next generation of future leaders to think and act in a socially, economically, and environmentally sustainable way. And being able to use this technology to apply to that is a daily, habitual education exercise of being able to constantly learn, to always understand that innovation is going to be different from one day to the next. As I've mentioned, building expectations is a key component to my role in dealing with our clients and managing the technological advances that are happening behind the scenes. I think that, and one of the bigger missions that we have done is created the Metaverse Mall. And I think if you weren't going to get to it, I'll get to it now. But one of the things that we have done is created the Metaverse Mall that really plays that long game of how brands and companies can be involved in a space where that mission will be driven by our core team of being able to learn, being able to innovate, being able to communicate and create community where there's a safe place to do that, where the content remains relevant and consistent, where there's traffic as well. And, I think, we haven't quite got to that conversation yet. I haven't quite heard it today because everybody's trying to figure out, how to build their own metaverse. But these metaverses need to come together. We need to have interoperability between these metaverses so I can travel with my purse, my wallet, from one brand location into another, depending on if it's in our metaverse or another platform that's out there. So I think, building that community right now is really important for our team to be able to build the trust in the clients and also the traffic, those consumers that are going to start to walk the halls of our mall and visit those portals of stores and things like that, and then exchange money because there's trust there. And having that part of our evolution of a product to be able to offer that as a driven mission is something that we're truly excited about.
Yeah, in terms of the conversations you're having, I'm sure that companies are coming to you, brands are coming to you and saying, we need to build a metaverse, right? If we're Nike, we need to have NikeVerse. So you look at certain brands and you know that this is still, right, we're still sort of in our infancy of what we're building out. And we're looking at the great work that's happening with Roblox and Sandbox and even the interesting stuff that's happening in Decentraland. But again, they're like Decentraland specifically, a little bit more of a closed ecosystem, right? And so as you're thinking about what you're all doing and what you're building, and somebody says, I want to come in, I want to build something really big. I've sat in on a couple of your conversations where you ask all the right questions. But when you think about this now, and you talked a little bit about the mall is definitely a very graspable way for people to get their heads around, because if you were a kid in the 70s and 80s and 90s, you lived in a mall, right? So it's an easy thing. And as a brand marketer, that is your B2C, right? That has been your B2C. That's how you interact with your customers. what, in addition to the mall, and I want to come back to the mall a little bit later, but what else is happening in this space? What other use cases are there right now for what's happening in the metaverse? You mentioned education before. You said a couple of things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, fintech is a huge piece. Medical technology and training, not trying to get away from, branding and marketing, but implementation of training, of immersive training is happening right now at the highest levels of enterprise. And, enterprise does lead this industry, as far as adoption and being able to put budgets in place to be able to buy numerous amounts of headsets to be able to apply these new training, these new training applications to it. So there's a lot of stuff going on in the metaverse, and there's a lot of pieces and parts to that. What I keep hearing is that budgets are being approved. It's just, now let's get to work. What do we need to do to be able to put this together? And what are the steps in not only from a marketing campaign point of view, but a technology aspect? Is there a play to win aspect in that space? Is there a marketplace that, are they going to be able to buy those goods digitally and for real? That's definitely a new thing, and if brands aren't even thinking about that, you need to. There's so many opportunities right now of being able to brand avatar clothing, and I'm surprised we haven't seen that already. I do think we're going to see an upswing of that, because people are starting to create their avatars, and why wouldn't I want to wear, say, a MetaVRse shirt or any other branded shirt or shoes or a hat or something that a brand can identify in the metaverse as theirs? So that's obviously a whole different conversation, but there's so many different ways to be involved in the metaverse and start to apply your brand in multiple different ways.
Well, my avatar, I plan to make younger and in better shape. That's definitely happening. And we'll dress him better than I know how to dress. Okay, so that covers a lot of ground, right? Where we are now. What do you think? Because technology moves so fast, right? And I would say, what's your outlook? The next couple of years, where do you see the marketplace moving right now in terms of working with brand marketers, working just with overall companies, and even the creators of the world? Where do you see this moving to in the near future?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely see a lot more partnerships taking place in how content can be partnered with a brand. And I think, and it's been said over and over again, we're lacking content now. How do we get people into the metaverse and keep them there and keep them interested in being there? And then even harder, how does a brand keep people from coming back more and more? And I think, this is where the marketplace is really going to take off. I know that the term NFT has been a buzzword, for less than a year, and it's only going to increase, more and more as things evolve and the cryptocurrency phase makes its way into when blockchain makes its way into these worlds, so that transactions can start to take place. So definitely partnerships, but partnerships in creating content that's engaging and then has a purpose to return. And there's a term I use, I'll introduce it now. It's called return on experience. What's your return on experience in the engagement of a metaverse experience? What is that return that you're expecting of people to return, to buy, to interact with the assets? And this is a whole new perspective that we didn't have before. When I went to buy a pair of shoes, I went to the mall, I would look at them, I've had them in my hand, but you couldn't, as a store, you would never really know what color I was looking at or the style of shoe or boot, but now we do. And this is where this is the game changer of all games, and being able to invite somebody into your virtual store. And I'm going to say store and showroom, because I think there's a lot of demand right now. And Bob, we've seen this, everybody wants to create their own metaverse. Everybody wants to create their own metaverse. And there's so many different reasons why they want to do it. I want to do it for my business. I want to do it for, for my store and my brand, that sort of thing. So I think if everybody starts to wrap their thoughts around having a showroom for their brand, business, product, training application, what that showroom can include are assets that reach into that brand and provide resources to that user slash guest in your space. It could be a link to a PDF of the handbook, or it could be that brand, that you're actually looking at that shoe, interacting with that shoe and changing the colors and picking the preference of that shoe that you would like to have. And then, eventually, obviously putting that into the cart and buying that purchase so it can be delivered to my home. That's that end game. But I think, brands really need to look at who they're partnering with. Influencers are going to play a huge piece of this. We've already, we've had conversations. They're coming up more and more. And even some people, you have to have the Instagram campaign, you have to have the TikTok campaign. What do those all look like, and which influencers are you going to use to get your brand out there to be accepted, and then not only accepted but engaged with? Like, what are you doing to connect with that client? And that's one of the biggest challenges, I think, right now for brands, of how do they do that?
Yeah, no, I think you're right. And I think we've all defaulted, right? We've said, oh, Metaverse, e-com. Like, we just default to e-com. We're going to sell more products. We're going to sell more services in this way. But I think this is the perfect marriage of performance marketing and brand marketing, where you can come into a space and really understand the nuance, the brand essence. You should be able to walk out. The only thing you won't be able to do is smell it, but you should be able to actually
soon.
Soon. Yeah, 3-6 years. But how interesting that you can actually really build out a brand experience while you're still giving people an opportunity to source, buy, recommend. And I think you're right. I think the influencers are going to play a huge role in this, because again, the other part is you have to have traffic coming here. It's not like anything else. The reason that the social platforms have done so well is because they created a compelling reason for people to come back again and again and again and again. That's going to be the case, I think, if you're building your own metaverse. What's your experience? But even more importantly, and maybe the simple first solve is joining a metaverse. Like you mentioned the mall before. Maybe it's becoming a tenant in a space like that, a traditional tenant, in a virtual world, where you're actually being kind of seen and heard and experienced with other like brands, so that you're taking the benefit of all that. I think that's interesting. In terms
and just to jump in, like with that piece there, I think it's so important that the thought of hybrid immersion is what's taking place here. There's a lot of people out there that are, I've seen in comments on LinkedIn, and when we see these malls that are being developed, is it looks boring. It looks like the mall down my street. It just, like, what do you mean it's going to look like this? This is boring. And I think we need to have that boring sensation just to get in there, because we're still seeing people struggling with the idea of it. And the fact that Metaverse, we built this mall, we've created a place that people are familiar with, and they can say, yeah, I can go to a mall, I could do this. And then once they're in the mall, hey, you can portal them into whatever world and design that, whatever it takes over from there. But I think, understanding that there has to be a little bit of hybrid activity happening right now, because there's so much happening. And, our devices will allow us to start to interact with experiences like this. The pinch and zoom feature is huge. This is where we start to touch the technology and invite that into, our daily experiences and how we're communicating with technology. And then pretty soon we'll go zooming into, headsets and things like that. But that ability to interact with 3D models and assets is a huge thing for brands to be able to invite into their consumers' experiences.
Yeah. So now imagine, right? Let's take it back to the brand. So now imagine we're talking about what a great experience this is for brands, for sales, everything. You're a brand marketer, and you've been reading, you've been hearing, you've been in things like this where everyone's talking about the metaverse. What do you need to do? What do you need to know before you start having a really informed conversation about bringing your brand into the metaverse? Like, do you need to have experienced any of this in real life or anywhere else? Or is there an ability to walk in here and be very honest and transparent and say, look, I don't know what I don't know. I need to learn this. Or is there going to be this moment of we're going to take advantage of people, like really trying to come in here. And it's back to 1998. And it's give me $5 million to build your first website. No, we have to change it again.
I think that, first of all, brands need to, one thing that is not quite obvious yet that I keep sharing because I just finished a project on this is brands need to consider what their brand looks like in 3D. Let's start there, right? Okay, what does your logo look like in 3D? What does it look like in an environmental space, a world that has multiple different perspectives? And just to give you an insight on this is I worked with a client recently who we put their logo in the space and their color palette, but the reflections within that world gave off different feedback. And of course the brand stopped and said, hey, you know, our red is looking black. Why? And it was because something was too metallic. And this is a technical thing that happens behind the scenes, but it's something that, you know, do you have a rule book on your typography and your brand design and what your logo looks like and your color palette? What do those things look like in an immersive space right now? And doing an analysis of that and being able to have that Bible of what your brand looks like in an immersive space with spatial awareness and spatial design considered is that huge first step. Being able to understand your assets and what you're selling, or what is that interactive piece that a consumer would interact with in your space, if it's a shoe collection or if it's a purse collection, whatever that is, but maybe it's something else. You need to understand that you have to have 3D models to be able to put into your virtual space, your showroom or your mall space, whatever you're creating, your metaverse space, that can be interacted with. And then, you know, are there different perspectives? Are there different SKUs, different colors, different styles? And that's where you need to start off with. So, you know, from my perspective of producing a lot of these experiences, that's one of the first things is, do you have assets? Are they built already? If they're not, then let's start there. Let's get your CADs developed so that we can get it into our engine, so we can see what it looks like, so we can make sure it looks as real as possible. Because that's the other thing, is that you want to move to hyper-realism. You don't want things as, you know, there's certain things that can cross over as cartoony, but then when it comes to your products, you actually want to see the, you know, as real as possible. You don't want to see, you know, a goofy looking purse or shoe or clothing items. So, you know, as you get into realism, there's more technology that needs to be behind it, but that's where you need to start if you want that consumer to eventually hit pay here.
Yeah, so literally you're talking about at the beginning of a campaign, right? The inception of the development of a new campaign. The metaverse has to be part of that conversation from the beginning, because you're talking about asset creation, curation, and delivery. And you've got to think about that. So the creative agency is really going to have to start thinking about that from the very beginning, just like that changeover happened when we went from linear to digital and we had the marriage of both.
Yeah. Exactly. And story, you know, creating that story is so important of, you know, what is the journey of that user? And it comes back to the return on experience. What is the experience that user is going to feel when they go through that experience? What are they going to do while they're in your experience? That's something else. Like, you have to give people things to do, and maybe it's earning points, which is huge. You know, the pay to play, the shop and earn, and, you know, gamify things so that maybe there's a coupon at the end of it, or an invitation for something real, or you can ship them a product, or whatever it is. You have to give the user a purpose for being there, and, you know, for being there as long as you can as well, and you want them to come back.
So it sounds like there's also, I think you're exactly right. I think there's three takeaways that I keep hearing, right? How do you represent your brand in the metaverse to your customer, right? Current perspective, retention, upsell, all those things that are great. Get them to really believe in your brand so they come back and again and again and again. The other thing is B2B, because we're also interacting with the people that grow our business on the business side. And that seems to be like, you're gonna have a very hard time, I think, differentiating people coming to your metaverse or going into these experiences. So that has to be a consideration. There is something I know that you guys do as well, and you work with new clients and customers. You're also thinking about how the metaverse will affect their employee base. and what that looks like from a human like an HR perspective, as well as training and onboarding. That seems like that's another use case that would be pretty significant to consider as you go through this.
Yeah, and when you say employee onboarding, it's just making sure that your employees have the skill sets to be able to design and create these experiences. So I've been working, intensely with enterprise clients and trying to help them scale and build out their teams and identify what those skill sets are that are required to be able to apply to building a metaverse experience, and not just with us, just with with any of the engines and tools that are out there. Spatial awareness and design is key right there. Just understanding that there is a spatial application to all things in a metaverse experience. 3D modeling, industrial design, creative design, those are key components, but you basically have a creative team now, and you have a technical team, and those teams need to work together. They need to pull both simulations from both sides. You pull the creative and you pull the technical, and then you've got to build an experience that has those applications. So creating your team that can support both the technical coding applications is also just as important as being able to have a creative team that understands how to apply those creative solutions to the technology. So it's definitely a learning pool for the whole team to understand how they need to work together and not siloed. Because there's so many different aspects that need to be crossed over to create that fluid experience that, at the end is just like, wow, it worked, and yes, it's functional and people are interacting and things like that. And that comes from your team and how they build things.
Yeah. Do you see anybody who's been an early pioneer in this? Do you think that anybody is approaching this like from a model citizen's perspective? Anybody that's really doing a great job in terms of coming in as a brand?
There's a few of them, obviously, but everything right now is, there's a lot of entertainment that's happening out there, which, a lot of, everything from Justin Bieber, Paris Hilton, we were just talking about all those, they're fun events, right? There's a lot of one-time off events that are happening, which is great. It's great for everybody to get used to. But I think, what we're talking about here today, getting versed in the metaverse, is how do we now move to a stage where we start to stay in the metaverse and we start to do some of the things that we would have normally done, like go to the mall, and shop and, interact with each other. And I think the community part is obviously a very big part in how it makes it inviting and interesting. And it's one thing to go into these experiences by yourself, but it's really cool when you go in with friends and you go and experience things together. And that's the sweet spot of the metaverse, is doing things with other people. So if I could, say, hey, Bob, let's meet at metaverse.com/mall and let's go shopping together. That's really interesting now. That's interesting for people. It's a draw in, and being able to have that community base that's safe, and you're surrounded with relevant content that applies to you. That's attractive right now, and that's the content that we need.
Yeah, I agree with you. So we've got some questions that are coming in. I would encourage anybody, if you have any questions for Julie, please go ahead and start sending them through. We'll be able to get them, and we'll have Julie answer at the end. But Julie, we're like 5 minutes from the end of our session. So as we wind it down, you've got a great community of brand leaders on this call, right? The thing that Brand Innovators does so well is it's got such an amazing audience. What would you share with this audience? What would be your, hey, as you're jumping into this, or you're thinking about it, or you're about to take that next step, what advice would you give to this community about starting in the metaverse? And then we'll go to questions.
Sure. I think, first of all, take a look at your team, making sure it's diverse. And one thing we didn't talk about is that I'm a co-founder of XR Women. We're a group of women who started last year meeting every week in the virtual space and just learning from each other and understanding, all the different applications out there, but helping each other learn about the metaverse. One thing I've learned from my community, first of all, it's not just, North America based, that we've got women who are there from all around the world. I think for brand marketers, take a look at your team, make sure it's diverse. And, you know, this may sound strange, but women hold a lot of creativity that can apply to building immersive experiences that men don't necessarily, not all men have. So that's why I'm saying make sure your team is diverse, you know, and, you know, men lend themselves to technical roles. They often have, and I know things are changing, but that's why I come back to make sure your team is diverse, and you'll find a really, really nice balance. And if anybody needs an XR woman, let me know. I have lots of people to provide sources to.
Yeah, you've done a great job, I think, in terms of building that out. I think it's absolutely fantastic that you've created something like that, and it's so vibrant. Every time I see something about XR for women, it's growing. It's never stagnant. There's always a really important group of people that are contributing and participating.
And at the forefront of this technology too. They're the ones that are building and developing and learning. And that's the type of, you know, role model you want in your company to be able to work for you.
I also think this would be great for any of the brand marketers getting ready to jump in or at their infancy of this. They should actually reach out, talk to you, because there's probably a lot of very, very smart and powerful people in the org that you can connect them to as well.
Absolutely. Happy to.
All right, I'm going to take a question. So we have a question that you answered one of them directly. One of the things that we've been asked is, how has COVID and Zoom helped the adoption of interactivity within Metaverse lands?
Yeah, I think, you know, we've zoomed ourselves out. We're bored of this. We need more, right? And I've always said one day we're going to jump into that camera and we're going to, you know, jump into that metaverse, and it is starting to happen. I'm on multiple events, and I host the WebXR Awards in a couple of weeks. Join us for the Polys on February 12th. But understanding that beyond Zoom, and yes, COVID accelerated all of the virtual work and the remote work, but beyond Zoom, there are some pretty cool worlds that are out there. And being able to have that interoperability between the metaverse worlds, that's what's next. You know, there's a lot of talk of siloed metaverses, and these metaverses are going to come together, whether it's at our mall or somewhere out there, but they will be connected through portability, and the interoperability standards are being built out by several different communities right now, and that's an important piece. But just know that, you know, it's not all about one world. It's these worlds will start to connect. So if you're making an investment into a metaverse, you know, put your effort into it, because it will connect to another one sometime. You know, whether it's in our mall or it's somewhere else, they will all start to connect with each other. It's very meta.
Yeah, the nice part about this that I love is that everybody in the sessions I heard, we all keep coming back down to doing stuff with others, community, where typically technology has kind of created and made us carve out a space for our individual selves. This is really like in the last few years, and this is the fast evolution, right? We're going to be able to do things with people again. Instead of a flat environment, you're really going to feel like there are amazing things happening around you and with the people you care about and love, and even new people that you're going to be able to meet in this space. So Julie, thank you very much. And Sydney,
thank you.
We're sitting there right at time.